What if 5 acres could pay you a full-time salary? Not from one big cash crop, but from vegetables, eggs, meat, honey, and a crop you harvest in the dead of winter, all on the same piece of land. Most people think you need 50 acres or one perfect crop to make farming pay, and most who try it that way are out of money within 2 years because 5 acres of one thing is still a commodity, and commodities pay commodity prices. The small farms that actually replace a paycheck don't grow one thing, they design a system where every piece feeds the next, the waste from one becomes the feed for another, and money comes in every week instead of once a season. By the end, you'll have the exact 5-acre layout, the real numbers for each stream, and the honest hours. And the last stop on the tour is the one that turns a good side income into a salary you can actually quit on, and almost nobody includes it. But before we walk in, I want to ask you something. If you had 5 acres, what would you build? Tell me in the comments. Here's the shift that makes all of this work. Successful small farmers don't think like growers, they think like business owners. A grower asks, "What should I plant?" A business owner asks one question about every square foot: how does this create another income stream? That single change in thinking is the whole farm. So here's the honest version, up front. Worked part-time, this land is about a $30,000 a year side income. Worked full-time, it's around $50,000, roughly the take-home of a typical full-time job, and the number that lets you actually quit. Scaled up, with one part-time hand, it pushes past 80, same 5 acres. The only difference is how many streams you stack, and whether you sell direct. And before you copy any of this, please don't copy it blindly. 3 rules first. Test your soil, so you build on what your land can actually grow. Know your market before you plant, not after. A buyer you've already talked to is worth more than a perfect crop you can't sell. And start small. Prove one stream pays in your area before you add the next. Every number I'm about to give you is kept deliberately conservative, because a farm built on fantasy figures is the kind that fails in year 2. So let's walk the 5 acres. The first thing you reach, right inside the gate, is the engine of the whole farm, a half-acre intensive market garden. Not a field, a tight block of raised beds you work with hand tools, planted close and turned over fast. A well-run half-acre like this grosses $30,000 to $50,000 a year in vegetables and nets somewhere around 20 after seed, soil, and your labor. And that's the conservative end. The growers this model is based on do more. But here's the catch that sinks most people. Wholesale pays pennies. You only reach these numbers selling direct. A farm stand, a market booth, a small CSA list. Grow what sells, not what you like to grow. And the garden throws off something you never sell, a steady stream of trimmings, bolted greens, and culls. Most farmers compost it. We're going to feed it to the next stop. Walk past the beds, and you reach 200 laying hens on pasture. Eggs are your weekly cash. They come in 7 days a week, which smooths out the lumpy once-a-season garden income. But here's the honest part. At feed store prices, eggs barely break even, because feed is by far the biggest cost. They pay for 2 reasons. First, the hens eat the garden's culls and the pests in your beds, which cuts that feed bill. Second, their manure becomes the compost that feeds the garden right back. Sold direct at farmers' market prices, 200 hens net somewhere between $4,000 and $8,000, and they make everything around them cheaper. Run alone, layers are a treadmill. Run as the glue between your garden and your soil. They earn their keep twice. The pitfall is simple. Don't add hens faster than you have customers for the eggs. The next stop is where the real meat money is, literally. Behind the layers, moving across the same pasture, are the meat birds. You raise them in batches, 3 runs of about 150 birds across the warm season, roughly 450 birds a year, at $5 to $7 of profit each after feed and processing. That's $2,000 to $3,000 in meat. But the bigger payoff is underfoot. The broilers follow the hens across the pasture and leave the grass richer than any fertilizer you could buy in a bag. The pitfall here is the one nobody warns you about: processing. It's the bottleneck. Don't raise more birds than you can legally process and actually sell. Just past the pasture, at the edge of the garden, is a stream that costs you almost no time at all and quietly makes everything else grow better. Bees, 5 to 10 hives along the garden's edge. Honey and a few spring colonies you can sell net somewhere between $1,000 and $4,000 a year on almost no daily labor. But the real reason they're here points the other direction. About 3 out of 4 of the crop types we grow get a yield boost from pollinators, so those hives don't just make honey, they make your market garden produce more on the exact same beds you already planted. You get paid twice from one box. The honest pitfall: bees have the highest failure rate of anything on this farm in the first couple of years, so don't count the honey money until you've carried a hive through a winter. Which brings us to the last stop, and the one that fixes the single problem every stream so far shares. At the back of the farm there's a small shed, and inside it is the stream almost nobody includes, because everything we've walked past has a season. The garden slows in winter, the broilers stop, the bees sleep, and that seasonality is the real reason most people can't quit, because the mortgage doesn't take winter off. This shed fixes it. Microgreens, grown indoors on shelves, in a footprint smaller than a parking space. A 7 to 14 day cycle means you're harvesting fresh greens year-round, in January, when nothing else on the farm is making a dime. With steady restaurant and market accounts, a part-time microgreens setup nets $10,000 to $20,000 a year. That's the stream that turns a seasonal side hustle into a steady, every-month salary, and it's the one almost everyone skips because a rack of trays looks too small to matter. The pitfall, and this is the whole game: microgreens are a marketing business, not a growing business. Growing them is easy. Finding and keeping the buyers is the actual job, so line up your buyers before you plant a single tray. Now stand at the center and look back at what we built. Nothing here is wasted. The garden's culls feed the hens feed the soil, the broilers feed the pasture, the bees feed the harvest. The one rule nature runs on is the same rule this farm runs on. Every output is something else's input. That's not just tidy, it's what makes the whole thing profitable, because you stop paying for the inputs you used to buy. So how do you build it without quitting on day one? You don't do it all at once. Year 1, the half-acre garden and the microgreens, run on the side. That's your $30,000 proof that the customers are real. Year 2, add the hens and the bees, go full-time, and you're near 50, the line where you can hand in your notice. Year 3, add the meat birds, scale the microgreens, bring on one part-time hand, and you're past 80. Each stream pays for the next. You never bet the whole thing at once. And picture what that actually buys you: waking up to work that's yours, money coming in every single week instead of one paycheck that could disappear in a layoff, 5 streams instead of one. That's the difference between 5 acres of one thing that pays commodity prices and 5 acres designed as a system that pays you a salary. So I'll ask you again, if you had 5 acres, what would you build? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe, because in the next video we take this exact system and build the version that runs on nights and weekends without quitting your job first.